Well, I'm Magnus, and I'm an illustrator and comic book artist and typeface designer and teacher, I guess, doing all the things that cartoonists usually do. I'm from Copenhagen, and I studied in a small town in Denmark called Viborg. I did a bachelor in graphic storytelling in this really awesome international school called the Animation Workshop. And yeah, I just recently moved to Portugal, so that's where I am. So I just moved to Portugal where my girlfriend is, and slowly getting the hang of things here and starting out some freelance stuff. And I don't know a lot of languages, and I mean I learned a little bit of French in school when I was small, but so Portuguese is the kind of the first foreign language that I'm really trying to get into. I mean, apart from English, obviously, which I'm, you know, we can do the whole thing in Danish too, if that's good. I'm getting used to Magnus. It sounds bold. I was interning in Toronto, as you know, and people were like, "Oh, Magnus, Magnus," and I was like, "Should I tell them it's Magnus?" And I think I told someone, and they were like, "Oh, let's stick to Magnus. It's cooler." It was amazing. So it was in my last semester of the animation workshop of my bachelor in graphic storytelling, and we have an internship semester. Spent a month in LA first, doing some writing for TV animation, and then I went to Toronto for 3 months after that. And I was interning with the Raid Studio. It's out by Queen Street West. Really nice place. It's like this collective of comic book creators and designers and illustrators. And it was an amazing time. Great people. And so I'm really looking forward to going back there as well. I was interning there, yeah. I was taking part in their anthology, which is actually coming out now. I think like it just got crowdfunded not like a while back. And so I did a small comic there. And then I was also working just on my own on DiSCONNECT actually, which I was already working on in school as my graduation project. And then in LA, I decided to kind of redesign a lot of things. And I got a lot of feedback on the story from Steven Siegel, who I was interning with in Los Angeles. So I rewrote the story and remodeled it a lot. And then in Toronto, I started redrawing it. So it's the Raid Studio and the anthology. I think, so they've done a bunch. And I think this is like 5 and 6 combined, or 4 or 5. It's called Barada and Nikto, I think. Yeah, just like a little fantasy thing. Like a good tourist, I'll say Kensington Market. But I actually really liked Parkdale. I grew very close to Parkdale. That's where the studio was. And I just like it out there. I would take little walks down to the water, super close, because it's like all the way out Queen Street West. So like you could just cross a bridge and you're by the water. I love that area. I like Roncesvalles. I ended up moving a lot around while I was there in those 3 months. So I got to see a bunch of different places. But yeah, I like Roncesvalles and the Junction, so the whole west part. Didn't spend much time in the east, but yeah. But Kensington Market obviously is super nice. You know, it's nice. Yeah, yeah. I mean, in Copenhagen, we were thrown onto the bike lane at like age 5 or whatever. I have a lot of siblings, so we would just ride like our little bikes in a line after our parents. So we learned to ride the bike, and it's like I said, it's like the main form of transportation. You know, we don't drive. Like I can't drive. You know, I don't have a driver's license. I bike. You know, and Copenhagen is small enough, so it's walkable. Everything is like 15 minutes, half an hour biking distance. You know, super nice. I have a bike at home in Copenhagen, which is like it's just like an old shitty bike. It's like one of the leftover ones. Super rusty. That word vintage is a positive word at this point. It's like, I guess it's like what do you call it? Like a woman's bike? You know, like the male bikes go like this straight, and this one has like one of these. So it's like a big old, it means like the garden fence door. What do you call that?
The gate?
Yeah, like the garden gate. We would call it that because it's like a big, heavy, rusty thing. We're in Mafra, which is just north of Lisbon. It's like half an hour north. Yeah, it's beautiful here. I really like small towns at this point. I grew up in Copenhagen, which, you know, relatively to the world is a small town. but it's a big city. And I studied, like I said, in a small town in Denmark, and I just grew very fond of like small town life, and it's more affordable too, which is great in my business. So I really like it here. It's like a nice small town. It's like quirky and charming and beautiful nature, and yeah. Major hobbies? I mean, you said we'd be talking about music later. I would say music's a big hobby of mine. I listen to everything. I listen to everything. I mean, not everything. I mean, all genres is what I mean. Pretty much. Not so much heavy metal. I haven't gotten much into, but I'm pretty much all over the place. I think like my core is like classical rock, probably, but like, yeah, like rock 60s, 70s, 80s. And then, but I listen to a lot of hip hop and a bunch of other things, R&B, soul, blues. Yeah, I like it all. And that, yeah, I listen to all kinds of music, I was saying. And I think like also in the book, I try to like incorporate some stuff I like when the characters are listening to music, it's like one scene it's Bob Dylan, the next scene it's MF Doom, you know. So it's like very varied. I think it's nice. I started drawing when I was really young, and then yeah, you know, it's a little baby boy. We always drew. Me and my siblings, we would draw a lot. My dad would draw with us, and yeah, it just continued. And I think I had a break like when I was like 14, 15 or something. I think it stopped a little bit. I just, you know, wanted to be more social, I guess, and more, you know, fit in with the guys and play soccer and shit, which is fun. And then it kind of came back during high school. I was like, oh, I want to do something with this, you know, this is what I love doing. I went to like the high school I went to was like technical, so it was very science based. And then but I had this line of study called, which is like product development. So there was a lot of design, which I really loved, and I got to draw a bunch, but more like technical drawings and stuff. And that's when I started getting more and more into comic books and animation. And I actually thought I wanted to animate, and looked into like, because that was like, oh, you want to draw for a living? Become an animator, you know. And we happen to have like one of the best animation schools in the world in Denmark. And so I looked into it, and I found that they have a comic book line, or like an illustration and comic book line, which is much more what I want, because I'm into writing and illustration. So after high school, I took a gap year where I just worked my ass off full time, saved up money, and in the evenings I would do portfolio to get into the school, and then I was lucky enough to be accepted among the few. So the program is called graphic storytelling, and it's a 4-year bachelor, and it's part of the school called the animation workshop. So they have graphic storytelling, animation, obviously, and computer graphic arts. And graphic storytelling is mostly focused on writing and illustration and design for animation. And then comics is kind of the language that we learn to it's like sequential art, essentially. So it's a lot of design for animation. We also have like storyboards workshop, writing workshops, and character design workshops, and background design workshops, and yeah, all kinds of stuff. A little bit of animation as well. And yeah, really good. I mean, absolutely. I became an artist in this program. I wasn't an artist. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing when I was applying. This is where I found everything, you know, that I do now, and myself, and a community, you know, most importantly. That was probably one of like the biggest takeaway from those 4 years, is the community you built, and the friendships along the way, and the focus on process, you know. I think that's the thing. Like I didn't graduate the school and it's like, now I have my style. Now I'm the artist I want to be. It's like, no, now I have the tools to continue to grow as an artist. Like I'm still finding my style every day, you know. I'm actually working with some of my really good friends from the animation workshop who did the animation bachelor. So they're professional animators. And we're creating a pitch for turning DiSCONNECT into an animated thing. And we're working with this Danish animation studio called Skjalborn. It's a really cool place. And yeah, I'm actually right now, like these weeks, we're finishing up the pitch, which is like a 45-second trailer for the project. So it's going to be really cool. And they're animating, so they're designing all the movements, and we have this really great musician who's made really good, beautiful piece of music for the trailer and for the project. And they're animating, and then they're sending the roughs and the tie downs to me, and I'm the cleanup artist, as it's called. So I'm just like drawing. It's like in comics, it's like inking. They're sending me the pencils, and then I'm inking it frame by frame. So that's really cool. It's really exciting, and it's crazy to see this project that I've been working on for like 2 or 3 years in a comic form move. Like now they are, instead of playing an instrument like this, they're playing an instrument like this. That's crazy. So DiSCONNECT is a 160-page graphic novel, and it's a book about these two musicians who used to be in a trio, but their third band member, the drummer of the group, passed away. And the two of them, they meet up a year later in the summer house where they all used to practice, record, have fun, and they find some of their friends' demos and try and make music on it again, which obviously goes to shit because it's not the it's not the creative process that's pressing. It's the grief, which is what the book really is about. So it's about two characters trying to connect to each other again after this tragedy, and also how to connect to the process of grief itself. Well, I mean, without getting too much into detail, I started working on the story back in, I think it was late 2021, and it was like loosely based on like earlier experiences I'd had of like young people in my life passing away. And then, I mean, the summer house setting is very much inspired by like my own summer house trip with the boys, which is like a very like close feeling for me. It's like something I've been doing very regularly with like friends from high school for many years. And so it has, I really like stories that are like contained in one environment. In Danish, we call it kammerspil, which is like a chamber play. So like few characters, one location. I really like that stuff. So I wanted to do something with that. And then in early 2022, one of my best friends died of brain cancer, and I was like, fuck, should I stop working on this project about grief because it's too close, or should I keep going? And I decided to keep going, and it was nice that I was already so far into the project that it was fictional enough that I could sort of have a distance to it, but at the same time it was like the subject matter was therapeutic for me, and I think the project definitely took a turn after that, obviously, and that's been following me for a long time. Yeah, and so I think like you might say like, oh, it's a comic about friendship and music and grief, but obviously like the music is just a surface level device to frame a story about grief, right? Like they are trying to make music together, which is a really, really difficult process because the real process is grief, and it's all the time looming sort of underneath, and the creative process and the interpersonal processes and relationship is completely fucked because there's this thing they're not talking about, but they're pushing onto each other in different ways. And I really love stories that's the thing about like the one location, few characters thing. Like I love how uncomfortable and claustrophobic you can make something when there's like one place, four walls, So, and when there's this unspoken, uncomfortable elephant in the room, because there's literally just one room. Yeah. Biggest influences. I mean, I have to mention Mike Mignola, which I'll be the 5,000th comic artist to say. But I mean, Mike Mignola was one of the people that got me into reading comics. Like Hellboy, it's been a very big part of my taste, and also like school, or like I've just studied that shit so much. Like it's just some of the most beautiful, poetic, visual comic storytelling I know. I mean, one thing is like the drawings and the art, obviously, but like the layouts and the pacing is just like magnificent. So that has been a really big influence, and probably why I like drawing with ink, and why there's so much black in my panels, and just a little black panel press not there. But yeah, stuff like that, like Mignola, also David Mazzucchelli, really big influence. Yeah, Asterios Polyp, probably my favorite graphic novel of all time, which I'm also the 10,000 comic artist to say. But like that book is just, it's just
Which
perfect.
one did you say?
Asterios Polyp. It's like a name, so it's like a, yeah. I mean, yeah, plenty of. I think like plenty of like music is just like a really big influence. Like a lot of musicians, and yeah, I feel like music is a really big influence in my work. Like either it be the lyrics or the just what how the music sounds. Like it can be translated into lines and shapes and colors. Yeah, so that's a really big part of it. And I think it's. I mean, I think you should always be influenced by other mediums than the one you're working in. I think it creates for like interesting mixes. And so like I mean you can walk on the street and see a beautiful building and be like, okay, I want to make like an illustration based on this architecture influence or whatever, and yeah. So the characters in Disconnect are anthropomorphic, and I think I definitely wanted to create like a contrast that was like contrasting the subject matter with something that's cute, which I mean I just, it's nice when there's a contrast between how things look on the surface and how things feel, in reality, or like the subject matter or the themes of the story. I mean, like the best example ever, obviously, probably like in comics is Mouse, right? Not to even, remotely compare myself to that. But like, but yeah, so I wanted to make, yeah, I just really like it when things are not what they seem. Like it kind of takes you by surprise and creates this, wonderful engagement and like break between expectations of what you're seeing and what the thing is about. And yeah, like specifically, I was like, so when I started working on the book while I was still in school, there was a group of animators from my school. They were doing like a graduation project, which is this wonderful animated short called Bean Boy. And like in that, it was a project that was pitched for a TV show, and it has these like three anthropomorphic characters that are a frog and a cat and a rabbit. And I think that definitely like played into like what like the animals I wanted to draw. And then I think it also played a role in like I was like, oh yeah, it is really lovely to make something that's so cute and weird on the surface, but underneath it's actually about something, which that short also is. So I really like that. I think I focus a lot on image composition in general, and like what is the story in each picture, like how can, or what's the feeling in each picture, and how do you evoke that. And I mean, I've been taught like, like image composition and focal points and whatnot, but it's like, how can you cram as much story in there as possible. And I think Disconnect being in one location, or like two if you count the outside, right, is like, you can play so much with that. It's like, oh, there's that empty chair between them as they talk, and like, how do you make, you put that in the center of the picture, and you put, and it's stuff that you might not notice on the first read, but it's like, yeah, I really like composing those story elements in the pictures, and hopefully make that apparent feeling wise. Yeah. I would say that my art style is like grounded, like it's clearly like handmade and weird and wonky, but it's also, I hope that it has like this like dreaminess, like there's something weird extra going on. Yeah. Yeah, so that was a big part of the comic. Obviously, it's like I wanted to do the story about music, and that's another big influence, by the way, like Jim Mahfood's work. I was really getting into at the time, and I just feel like his art looks like music, and I was like, I want to do something with that. Like I want to make like weird patterns and shapes that are sound. And I thought it was just like such an awesome challenge to do a comic about music, and like what does music look like what does it sound like, but what does it look like. And to use that thematically and like really get into like the writing aspect of it, and like, so there are three characters in the book, and they play an instrument each, and so each instrument plays like looks different, obviously. So the way I usually describe like the concept of the music in the book is like in the Pixar movie Ratatouille, when he's tasting different foods and the background fits to black and it becomes like this abstract thing. So that's basically what I'm doing, what I'm trying to do in a comic. Like Ratatouille is a movie where taste is not a sense, and I'm trying to do that in a comic where audio is not a sense. So I'm trying to represent the sense of audio visually, and each instrument and character then has a shape and a color. And depending on how it feels when they're playing together, like when they're all three together, everything is like very saturated. The colors are merging, the shapes are merging into each other. And it's supposed to feel good and it's supposed to sound good. And that's like design. That's like a lovely design challenge, And so it's like it harmonizes, everything feels lovely because it looks lovely. And then later in the story, when they're trying to play together with their friends, drum beats that are like pre-recorded, if a character is feeling out of tune, that shape and color will become desaturated. It's going to tangent with the other shapes, and it's going to feel really uncomfortable. And so, yeah, I mean, pictures have that impact, just like sound, like you can look at something and it can look awkward and uncomfortable and compressed. And I really wanted to play with that. So yeah, later in the story, as you know, Andrew, there's this scene where, they just fucking can't get it to work. And it's like the climax of the story. And that the music that is played there, it's like at its worst point, it's like all the colors are desaturated. None of the shapes are merging nicely. It just looks like a weird spider web of shapes in the background that is like really, they're caught in this uncomfortable abstract world, as opposed to what we've seen earlier in the comic, like when it works, it's like a lovely dreamy world, the music. So yeah, the characters, they kind of process the grief, which is the loss of the same person, in two different ways. So in the beginning, Frog is like really hesitant about starting to make music again, and Cat is very enthusiastic about it. And then sort of towards the middle of the story, the roles sort of switch. So Cat sort of convinces Frog to really be there, but in that process, as soon as Frog's enthusiasm is back in the music sounds so much like the past that it hurts Cat, So Cat actually ends up where Frog was starting, and vice versa. So, now Frog is the enthusiastic one, and he has to convince Cat to be there, right? So they're both sort of pulling and pushing each other out of this music endeavor. Yeah, so DiSCONNECT is my first full-length graphic novel. I mean, I've done a bunch of other small comics. I had a short story published in 2021. I've taken part in that Raid anthology, like I said, and then I mean, throughout school, I've done like, countless small comic projects as exercises, and developed a bunch of pitches and children's book concepts as well and stuff. So. Well, I mean, I had the practice of making comics before, like I've made a lot of comics before, but in terms of like the long form thing, it's definitely been, I mean, I decided halfway through the process of like starting over, I guess, which is like a crazy thing to do. Like I finished the half of the story as my graduation project, and then decided to redo the whole thing, which is the version you're reading now. I mean, the challenge of making a graphic novel is, of course, there's the work itself, which is like a lot of work, but I feel like it's more facilitating the work because there's no money in it and it takes an awful lot of time. So it's more like the mental game of like, okay, how do I get this done? How do I stay in love with the project? How do I facilitate time to sit and work on it? Like I was, you have to get by, you have to get, I've been bartending for a long time, just to pay bills and rent and shit, and to buy myself that time so that I can finish a long shift and go home and draw. I mean, I know how to make a comic. I've done it for a very long time, but it's more like, how do you manage to get it done? That's the real challenge. Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, I treat it like because, like I said, I worked on DiSCONNECT while I was in school, and then like as my final project, like my graduation project for the school. And then I was gonna make the second half, but I kind of I got a bunch of feedback on the story and kind of reflected a lot on it, and decided to do some writing changes to the manuscript. and some changes to the art. Like as soon as I went to LA, like I just got this crazy sort of art, like sometimes when you move physically, your brain sort of flips. And I just had this like new sort of visual inspiration wave. And some people were like, no, it looks like the other one. Like it looks like the first version, the new one. But I mean, it's a different thing, and it's way more like the way I want it to be. And yeah, so I took the story that I had and just, the first part, drew that one over with some changes, a lot of changes to the layout specifically, and some a lot of the designs, and some changes to the story, switch some scenes around, and then I started working, on the second half after that. Yeah, it's crazy because you spend so much time on it, but like I mean I can't really explain it, but you just know when you have to do it, Like anyone would advise you, like, don't throw out the thing you've been working on. I was like, I have to do it, I love this project so much that I want it to be right, Not that you should, because that could also lead you to just work on something, for all eternity. At some point you have to call it done, right? And not be too precious, which is also an exercise in itself, but at that point it was really, it was the right thing to do. It's like, okay, this is my first long graphic novel. I want it to be what I want it to be, Good question. Good question. Well, I guess we'll be doing more of this. Maybe people want to check in for some interviews and like, and I really want to make like longer form posts on Substack about like the making of the book, which I think is really interesting, like all the behind the scenes stuff and the process, like some of the things we've talked about today, but like really in depth about, the process of making the books or like the book. And yeah, I think I would really love to do that. Same with the animation as well. I mean, in very, very early stages of a new comic book project, still just like trying to figure out the story in like broad strokes. But yeah, there's some really interesting ideas that I really wanna pursue, and like interesting new visual things as well. Like I like to always like try and push myself to do something different. Like, okay, now I did a book like this. I want to do something else, like I want to draw with different tools. I want to, make different layouts and different kinds of stories. I'm also working on some children's book projects, which is really fun. Then there's the animation, obviously. It's gonna finish soon. Some of the biggest advice probably that I give is like find a community, because that community is gonna be the fuel that gets you through making a project, making anything. Find some people that can hold you accountable when you're procrastinating, and find a community that makes you excited to draw and to write. And especially like if you're working on a long project, like it's crucial to have like a group that you're checking in with, like that are cheering for you and you're cheering for them. And and I think the internet is great for that. I was lucky to have it in art school and like in my uni, and continue to have it, like keep that network, yeah. And I would say structure is a big thing for me, like making it happen. Like I'm such a structure head. Like I love making like Excel spreadsheets and like time management plans for projects, like huge project plans. And yeah, that it like you got to get it done, somehow. And life is really chaotic, so you gotta, you need to find part-time work and get it done that way. But that won't matter if you get home from your shift and you don't draw the fucking book, So like cut out the time for yourself, like respect yourself as a professional. That's what's gonna get it done. Find out what you love about that project, and keep focusing on that and amp those things up, because that's what's gonna get it done, Find out the things that are gonna that like make you excited about it, and pour that into it. That's gonna get the project done, and it's gonna make the project better. Yeah. So find a structure and find some, yeah. A weird, interesting fact. I have 7 siblings. Yeah. I have 7 siblings. That's a weird fact.